inside me.
I started 164 feet back, and it's 23 steps for me. It's probably the longest run in the world.
For 15 years, the record has stood. The longest jump ever made by Bob Beamon. Now, this man, Carl Lewis, dreams of breaking that record. Can he do it? Dick Schaap with the drama and the dream of the perfect jump.
Right after this. An athlete named Carl Lewis won 3 major events at the National Track and Field Championships at Indianapolis. They were the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, and the long jump. The same events that Jesse Owens won at the historic Olympic Games in Berlin in 1936. Well, last month's victories virtually assure Carl Lewis a prominent place on America's Olympic track team next year in Los Angeles. But for Lewis, one of those 3 events, the long jump, represents a special goal, a dream to be fulfilled, breaking the long jump record. As Dick Schaap tells us, it's a singular record, an almost mystical goal for Carl Lewis and for the man who set the record 15 years ago.
Oh, actually, 1968 was the year for this Otis Redding classic.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away.
He drives down darkened streets haunted by memories. Memories of an event that took place 15 years ago. An event that lifted him out of the shadows and thrust him suddenly into the brightest spotlight. Mexico City, October 18th, 1968. El Estadio Olímpico, the long jump championship. Bob Beamon starts his approach slowly, gathering momentum, his strides stretching out, 19 of them. The last step, long and piston-like. His right foot pounding the takeoff board perfectly, driving himself up, up, up. His mind goes blank. His hearing deserts him. The stadium is silent. He hangs in the air, it seems, forever. When he comes down, his heels strike the sand with such force, he bounds on one hop like an airplane harshly landed right out of the pit. Bob Beamon has jumped 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches, 22 inches beyond the existing world record. Arguably, but conceivably, the most spectacular individual achievement in the history of all sports. Statistically, the equivalent of Roger Bannister bursting through the 4-minute barrier for the mile, not by a fraction of a second, but by more than 15 seconds. 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches. A magic number. A miracle. Good cause for joy and tears. 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches. 15 years later, the number still haunts Bob Beamon. It is his past.
I left my...
The number haunts Carl Lewis, too. It is his future. He remembers vividly the first time he heard the number.
The first day I heard it, I was at home. And I ran out on my front yard and measured it out. And I couldn't believe the distance. It looked like, 2 Cadillacs to me at the time. So it was so far that it was inconceivable. And I just couldn't even imagine ever jumping like that. And it was just something like, oh, that guy did something that was inhuman. And we'll never do it.
29 feet, 2 1/2 inches is no longer inconceivable to Carl Lewis. At the age of only 21, he is the finest active long jumper in the world. He has jumped farther than anyone else in history, anyone except Bob Beamon. Only Carl Lewis, of all the gifted men practicing this graceful art, has soared officially within inches of 29 feet. Only Carl Lewis has soared within inches of perfection. Lewis dreams of his own perfect jump.
I started 164 feet back, and it's 23 steps for me. It's probably the longest run in the world, one of the longest ever.
In his dream, Lewis thunders down the runway, his speed building, approaching 30 miles an hour as he drives into the takeoff board. And then, in his dream, he soars, soars beyond 29 feet 2 1/2 inches. He soars into history.
I'll stand up slowly and turn around and look back at it and just say, that's it.
The dream glows brightly for Carl Lewis, who grew up comfortably in rural New Jersey, whose father and mother are both track coaches, whose sister is, like him, a long jumping star, and like him, attends the University of Houston. For student Lewis, who sprints as brilliantly as he jumps, who enjoys the six-figure annual income common among the more gifted amateur track men, who hopes to become a broadcaster, the dream is endless.
In 10 years from now, I can just see flying to different sporting events, commentating here and there, and then maybe hitting on a sitcom for a few weeks, and then going back to my billion-dollar ranch out in West California near the river or something, near the ocean, and just having a good time.
Dreams come easily to Carl Lewis. Reality came hard to Bob Beamon, who knew neither comfort nor stability in his childhood. His mother's husband was in prison when he was conceived. His mother died when he was 1. Considered incorrigible, ineducable, Beamon had to struggle to become an athlete, to become a man. His magnificent jump in Mexico City did not turn his life into a dream. Cynics scoffed and said only the thin air of Mexico City made the jump possible. Physicists argue that the air meant little, and realists pointed out that his rivals did not break records. But still, Beamon's image was tarnished. He never jumped 29 feet again, never jumped 28, never jumped even 27 feet. His athletic career faded, and fame on a grand scale eluded him. He tried out for professional basketball and failed to make it. He tried professional track, and neither he nor the idea succeeded. He coached at little-known colleges in San Diego and here in New York, on the edge of this housing project in which he was raised. His 3 marriages collapsed. But Beamon did have triumphs, private triumphs. Graduate study in psychology, encouraging youngsters in the ghetto and in the Special Olympics.
Won't you listen to me?
Now he lives and plays in Miami, working for the Dade County Parks Commission, and he insists to others and to himself that he is not bitter, that he does not covet the fame and wealth that escaped him. Do you ever wish that you hadn't jumped 29 feet?
No, I've never felt that way.
Are you still a hero?
Yes, in a way. To the younger kids, when we have clinics, they put out 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches, and they just say, my goodness, how can you do that?
Carl Lewis believes he has already jumped 29 feet, probably beyond Bob Beamon's world record, possibly beyond 30 feet. Lewis believes he performed this magic not in a dream, but in Indianapolis last summer on this jump, a jump that was controversially adjudged a foul, a jump that was never measured officially. Did Lewis jump more than 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches? Will Lewis jump more than 29 feet, 2 1/2 inches? Those are lovely mysteries, and the man who has the best clues to the answers is an Israeli-born physicist named GIDEON ARIEL, a specialist in biomechanics, an expert in human physical exertion.
We utilized the film that actually was shot at the instance where Bob Beamon, in this case, jumped his best jump, 29 2.5. And we digitized, or we transfer the information from the body segments right to the computer. So every time
armed with films and with formulas, and with a computer programmed to perform biomechanical wizardry, ARIEL has studied not only Beamon's record jump, but also Lewis's controversial foul jump, the jump on which judges ruled with very little evidence that he inched past the takeoff board, the jump Lewis himself and many experts thought was the longest ever.
how far is the distance? Is that a world record? Some people say that that's probably over 30 feet. If we know this distance, and we know the distance from where he landed to the end of the pit in the good jump, we can calculate what is the distance from the end of the pit back to the foul jump. If I give it an upper limit, it was 28.11, which is the second best jump of all time. And
ARIEL has explored all the major track and field records and concludes that Beamon's is the closest to man's potential, theoretically within 3 or 4 inches of the absolute limit, the point where physical damage is inevitable, the point that Carl Lewis is aiming for.
That's where his injury is very close. I think if he will produce a jump that will go close to 30 feet, he might tear up his ligament or tear up his bone or tear up his some tissue.
I hope he's wrong. For one reason, because I feel that an athlete right now with the right type of technical training and obviously the right technique can jump well over 30 feet.
Well, sometimes we like to be wrong, but...
If ARIEL is wrong, if Lewis is right, Bob Beamon's record could fall any day. Or it could fall in the brightest spotlight next year, 16 years after Beamon's triumph in the Olympic Games.
The perfect thing would be if, in 1984, in the Coliseum, in Los Angeles, you jumped 30 feet, you won the gold medal, and immediately became the television commentator. What question would you then ask yourself?
I think the first thing I would ask myself was everything worth it? Was everything worth the time, the struggle, the effort, the emotional strain? So was everything that you've done over life worth just one moment?
And what would you answer?
Yes, without question.
29 feet, 2 1/2 inches. Bob Beamon produced it. And Carl Lewis can taste it.
Just think, only 4 1/4 inches stand between Lewis and the perfect jump. His next shot at the long jump record will be in Helsinki next month at the World Championship track competition. And after that, the Pan American Games and a series of events leading up to the Los Angeles Olympics. And if he's going to break that record, it's hard to think of a better place to do it than at the Olympics. Our thanks to Dick Schaap for that report.